Sergeant of Arms Murfitt will please admit Chairman Gray Hawk Sr. into the House chamber and accompany him to the rostrum. Members, ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor to present to you and the people of Montana, Chairman Justin Gray Hawk Sr. of the Fort Peck, Assiniboine, and Sioux tribes.
Dakepi. Daya ya hippie, nako daya uhippie. Chante washte na pe chiu zapi. Ana gichu pi na hiha awayang wicha amakia pedo. Ana wakshtin chawakpa Dakota nako nakota oyate emataha. Hello, my relatives. I greet each and every one of you with a good heart. I carry two names in my traditional life. The first name is Shoots for Him. I received when I was a young boy. My second name is Owl Looks After Him Man, and I received that here within the last few years. Thank you, Senator Sheehy, Congressman Zinke, Congressman Downey, Chief Justice Swanson, Senate President Reiger, Speaker Lur, and Majority Leader McIlvery, Governor Gianforte, Lieutenant Governor Juris, tribal leaders, distinguished guests, elders, youth, my wife Orlando, my children, and legislator. Thank you all who have gathered to listen to the State of the Tribal Nations address. Thank you, Representative Tuss, for your words of prayer. And please let me take time to introduce the tribal leaders that join me today. Blackfoot Tribal Chairman Rodney Jarvis, Councilmember Carol Langford of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes, President Gene Small, Northern Cheyenne Tribe, also Chairman Gerald Gray of the Little Shaw Tribe of Chippewa. Thank you, tribal leaders, for the honor. Thank you, tribal leaders, for the honor to represent you today. Honorable Governor Gianforte and Lieutenant Governor Juris, we appreciate your outreach to Indian country. We appreciate seeing some of our Indian people, such as Misty Cool as one of your cabinet members and Donnie Wetzel as part of your Montana Department of Transportation staff. You demonstrate your commitment to the Indian people when you have met with us, negotiated agreements, made staff available, and even provided congressional testimony to support tribal and state efforts. We look forward to working through the challenges and the opportunities facing our nations these next 4 years. Distinguished members of the Senate and the House of Representatives, and in particular, our American Indian legislators, our senators, Senator Susan Weber, Senator Shane Morgeau, Senator Jacinda Morgeau, and my Senator Jonathan Windyboy. Our representatives, Representative Shelley Fayant, Representative Tyson Running Wolf, Representative Sidney Fitzpatrick, Representative Mike Fox, Representative Donovan Hawk, Representative Jade Sutkis, Representative Thetis Crow, and my representative, the Fort Peck Tribal member, Frank Smith. Montana has the largest Indian caucus in the United States. The Montana voters truly showed its value that we need a state legislature that includes Indian representation and Indian voices. American Indian Caucus, we look to you for leadership as this legislative session continues. On behalf of the Fort Peck, Assiniboine, and Sioux tribes of the Fort Peck Reservation, and the tribal nations across the state of Montana, I am honored to present the State of the Tribal Nations Address, and I am proud to report our Indian nations are strong, healthy, and resilient. Legislature, we are your constituents and appreciate your support in many of Indian country's efforts. For example, the Assiniboine and Gros Ventre tribes of Fort Belknap received Montana's unified support for its pending Fort Belknap water settlement, in which Lieutenant Governor Juris gave Montana's supporting testimony to Congress. The Fort Peck tribes are proud to report through meaningful tribal consultation with the State Transportation Department, the roundabouts and artwork in the heart of Poplar, Montana, proudly reflect our culture of our community. The Little Shell tribe of Chippewa is gaining state support for its Cascade County economic ventures, and the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes in the state of Montana entered into an innovative marijuana tax sharing agreement. Those are only a few examples. There are many, many more examples of how our tribal nations and the state work together. Montana Legislature, Indian country is watching you. Our nations come to testify for or against your bills. Many of these bills can impact treaty obligations, and some clearly violate treaty promises. We appreciate seeing your bills to support law enforcement funding in Congress, MMIP, MICWA, Native American Day as a state holiday, government-to-government consultation, and especially expanded Medicaid, which has been the lifeline to Indian country and all of Montanans. We need to acknowledge the Charles M. Russell painting that dominates this chamber behind me. It fits somewhere between the Indian in a cupboard and the elephant in the room, because it always serves as a historic reminder of our relationships between the tribes and to those who came out west. At that time in the world, people were moving out west to fulfill their dreams of finding natural resources and an economy that the gold rush had to offer. Some moved to this area due to the flight from religious persecution from their own homelands. And others, such as Lewis and Clark and Sakakawea, were simply exploring the West. Many of our tribal nations have been in this territory since time immemorial. Montana is home to 7 of the largest Indian reservations in the United States. It includes 12 federally recognized tribes and over 78,000 American Indian residents. I come from the Great Sioux and Assiniboine nations of the Fort Peck Reservation. It's over 2 million acres and serves over 11,000 tribal members. The Fort Peck Reservation was established in 1888 by an act of Congress. In 1889, a year later, Montana was the 41st state to be admitted to the Union. The relationship between our tribal nations and other governments is unique in many ways. The United States Supreme Court has described it as a government-to-government relationship and describes our tribes as domestic dependent nations. The Supreme Court recognizes us as having a political status rather than a racial status. We all have much to learn from each other. The Montana Constitution requires all Montana public schools to teach students, Indian and non-Indian, about the American Indians. This constitutional mandate began in 1972, when voices from across the state traveled to Helena to testify at the Montana Constitutional Convention about the need to improve public school education for and about Indians in Montana. Article 10, Section 1, Educational Goals and Duties of the Montana Constitution states, the state recognizes the distinct and unique cultural heritage of the American Indians and is committed in its educational goals to the preservation of their cultural integrity. This legislature will continue to decide legislation to make good on this constitutional promise to deliver Indian education to all. The state is working through a class action lawsuit that our tribe started to uphold the state constitution with Indian education. This legislature has the power to fix and honor the values that the Montana Constitution holds today. To listen and learn from each other is just as important today as it was in 1972. Today, we continue to partnership. It is a partnership that must be based on mutual respect and understanding. For example, we are not okay with staff walking out during our testimony from legislative committee hearings. We know that as citizens of Montana, we all must listen and consider the input if we are all to move forward. It is not like the battles of centuries ago when we used guns and horses, but one where we used diplomacy and statesmanship to come together for the benefit of all. Our fights today are for the very survival of our tribal nations. Like any fight, we must pick our battles carefully. There should be no bills coming from the heart of Indian country that infringes on fundamental treaty rights such as hunting and fishing. And all of our tribes work together for the common good of all. For many years, the tribes of Montana have been national leaders in bringing buffalo back and reestablishing the spiritual, cultural, and material bonds that have linked our tribes to bison for thousands of years. Every reservation now has a buffalo herd, and Montanans and Americans across the country have applauded our work. Every year, thousands of people come to see our buffalo, and several tribes have given non-tribal hunters the opportunity to harvest bison on reservation lands. Unfortunately, our efforts have often been opposed by the state and other interests, along with the state's most recent treaty right challenge to hunt on unoccupied federal lands. Tribal nations are unified in defending our treaty rights. As we look ahead, I am hopeful that we can build a better cooperation with the state of Montana and work together to restore buffalo to their native grasslands on behalf of both our tribal and non-tribal people's interest. And we cannot allow racist bills that cause racist division in our communities. We appreciate the bills that support our native languages, and we cannot support bills that support only one religion to hang on the walls in our schools. Many foreigners fled to America over religious persecution from their own countries. We cannot now tell our children that there is only one way to speak or one religion. It is important to acknowledge and work to overcome the racism that exists in our state. Our elders teach us that we combat racism through common appreciation, understanding, and knowing who we come from, so we can share us with others. And as we visit through the Montana constitutional values and Montana values, I believe we will find that we have more in common than not. Like many in this room, I too am a devoted husband and a parent. I too care about the health of our people and the goodness of our communities and the sustainability of our economies. All of our tribal, state, and federal governments focus on improving good health, economic development, and the challenges of unemployment and being rural. For too long, rural Montana struggles in economic development. Our reservation suffers with an unemployment rate as high as 70%. Even with these high rates of unemployment and economic development challenges, the 7 Indian reservations of Montana and the Little Shell tribe of Chippewa, according to studies, contribute $1 billion toward the Montana economy. This is an important time to come together. It is important to remind ourselves and our surrounding communities that together we are greater than the sum of our parts. Despite the national news and the economies in Indian country, the economies in Indian country remain strong, viable, and ready to contribute. So continue to keep us in mind as you plan for Montana rural community needs. It is time to look hard at the infrastructure and development and energy development throughout Indian country. It is time to come together as one people with a single vision in developing how we can all benefit from improved energy. We have shovel-ready projects waiting for the winter to run its course. We have people who want to go back to work. Our nations are hungry for improvement. Legislators, as you deliberate to make laws that govern our state, let Charlie Russell's painting behind me remind you of your responsibility to include and represent American Indians. As you deliberate these ideas, please consider the impact you will have on our Indian nations. I agree with United States Supreme Court Chief Justice Hugo Black when he deliberated about our treaties that the United States made with our tribes. He stated, "Great nations, like great men, should keep their word." Aho. Piramia, Wopiratanka, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Grayhawk Sr. Will the Sergeant of Arms please escort Chairman Grayhawk Sr. from the chamber?